abuser of trade ties, but also went on to praise the Indian PM, calling him a fantastic man, also saying that he will be meeting PM Modi when he is in the US. In fact, he spoke about how leaders of India, China, and Brazil, quote, at the top of their game. On trade barriers that countries like China put, Trump said that he has a two-pronged approach for it. One, that he would impose reciprocal tariffs. Two, that he would ask companies to manufacture in the US to sell goods in the country. Listen into that entire statement while Trump was campaigning in Michigan.
If they charge us 100%, we charge them 100%. He said, you mean they charge us, we charge them? You got me. How simple could it be? It was sort of cool because he doesn't care. He's a senator, doesn't care about trade, but you know. So we're going to call it the Trump Reciprocal Trade Act, or I'll leave the name Trump off as long as we do it. So when India, which is a very big abuser, he happens to be coming to meet me next week, and Modi, he's fantastic. I mean, fantastic man. A lot of these leaders are fantastic. You have to understand one thing. They're 100%. These people are the sharpest people. They're not a little bit backward. They are at the top. You know the expression, they're at the top of their game, and they use it against us. But India is very tough. Brazil is very tough. There are certain countries, I can tell you every one. I can give you from top to bottom. China's the toughest of all, but we were taking care of China with the tariffs. So we're going to do a reciprocal trade. If anybody charges us 10 cents, if they charge us $2, if they charge us 100%, 250, we charge them the same thing. And you know what's going to happen? Everything's going to disappear, and we're going to end up having free trade again. And if it doesn't disappear, we're going to take in a lot of money.
Remember, this is not the first time that Trump has rigged this issue up. Last year as well, he had raised the issue of high taxes levied by India on select American products, including Harley-Davidson motorcycles. Back then as well, he threatened to slap a reciprocal tax on India if he's voted back into office this time around. So what does this mean when Trump says such a thing? Why is he saying it? Let's try and understand this. On the broadcast, I'm joined by Ashok Sajjanhar. He's a former ambassador. I'm also joined by Ambrish Ranjan. He is an entrepreneur. Good evening. Namaskar to both of you. Ambassador Sajjanhar, let me begin with you. What do you make of this statement? This is not the first time that Donald Trump is raking the issue of tariffs between India and the US. But when it happens, while you're campaigning, of course, what do you make of this statement?
Thank you very much, Shreya. I think you've answered the question yourself. It's not the first time that he's doing it. In the first term also, he went on and on about this. You would recall that in the first term, he had removed several of Indian products from the GSP. And, what we were getting, zero tariff entry into that. And the end result of that was that those products then started coming in from China. That was not the idea, that was not the purpose, because he had slapped much higher tariffs on imports coming in from China. You mentioned yourself, Harley-Davidson, it was 100% tariff. We reduced it to 50%. Still, he was not satisfied. So I think he has this theme that keeps going on in his mind, that bilateral relations between any country are determined by the trade level, by the trade deficit that you have. Now, even if you look at it, I'll just give you, very quickly, I'll just give you two statistics. Number one, if you look at the trade surplus that India enjoys with the United States, it is about $40 billion or so. We are number 11th as far as countries which have trade surplus with the United States. On top of the list, of course, is China. Then you have Mexico, you have Japan, you have Vietnam, you have Taiwan, you have Italy. So many countries. He doesn't speak about them. He speaks about India. And that I find quite galling. The second point I would like to make is he says India is a big abuser of tariffs. Now, India's tariffs, we have been bringing them down unilaterally over the years, and our tariffs are fully in conformity with our global obligations under the WTO. under the World Trade Organization. So I don't think that he has any business what to say, to say that India is has high tariffs or abuser of tariffs. I think this is something that is a
Okay.
conversation that will continue. He will continue to rave and rant about this. I'm sorry for using this expression, but I don't really have any other expression to speak about. When he says makes such totally inaccurate statements, and Prime Minister Modi is meeting him this time, so let us see. I'm sure he'll be able to tell him a little bit that our trade has been expanding. We need
Well,
really to
he
focus
said this.
on
The
expansion
External
of our
Affairs
trade.
Ministry has not confirmed anything. But
Hmm.
let's see if that meeting happens, Ambassador Sajjanhar. But let me
Yes.
also bring in Amrish Ranjan into this conversation. Amrish Ranjan, you're an entrepreneur yourself, and I have with me certain numbers here, and correct me if I'm wrong. This is the average applied tariff for all merchandise products in 2021 that India had, 8.3%, which is higher as compared to countries like China, which were at 7.5%, and the US was at 3.4%. The average applied tariff for non-agricultural products is 14.9% in India, while it was 3.1% in the US. With such kind of figures and tariffs that are applied, would then we say that Donald Trump is correct in saying what he's saying? Or would it still be unfair to put it across as being the biggest abuser of trade tariffs?
Thank you so much, Shreya, for having me tonight, and thank you so much, Mr. Sajjanar, for hitting the nail on the head when he said that he continues to do it again and again. In his last term, also he did it, and I would only owe it to election times, right? In election times, leaders say what people want to hear, and this is definitely one of that. And I
Yeah.
would link it to the latest Moody's forecasting for India as well, uh, because the
Mm,
initial forecasting was of 6.8% growth, and then they actually moved it to 7.2%. Now that is probably, I think that is the best in the world. That is the best growth rate in the world that they forecasted. No
mm,
other country has this growth rate, and it will come at whose expense? It will come at the expense of countries like US, countries like maybe China as well. So definitely it is
mm,
slightly worrisome for the USA as well, because their economy is also not in a very good shape right now. Their stock market, probably the Fed rate, the Federal Reserve cuts might help them. You never know which way it will go. But I think he's making a political statement, and the irony is, the very man who's behind all of this, that is Mr. Modi. He calls him a fantastic man in the very next line. So he's trying to,
yeah.
according to me, I think he's
Yes.
trying to, balance his statement, because he needs to meet him. And if he wins the
Mm,
election, he will have to work very closely with Mr.
mm,
Modi, because he is a strong ally in the eastern part of the world. He's probably the strongest ally
mm,
of Trump in the eastern part of the world. So I look at it as a
yeah.
political statement. Uh, yeah, you're saying something.
Okay. Ambassador Sajjanhar, I also want to understand from you, isn't it very rich from coming from a country that is developed, that has been at the top of its game in the past, to be telling a developing country as to why do you have high tariffs? Why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we, do trade that benefits us? Why shouldn't we tell countries to tell their companies to come and build here and manufacture in this country if you don't want to pay such high tariffs? What's wrong with that?
No, absolutely. I think you have answered the question yourself, Shreya, that you asked Amrish last time. Because, the United States is a developed country and it has 3% tariffs on
Yeah.
agricultural goods. The number of people, the size of its population, which is dependent upon agriculture, is minuscule. It would be 1% or 2%. As far as India is concerned, we have more than 60% of our population that is dependent upon agriculture. And our people, my farmers, are
Hmm.
not producing agricultural goods for commercial use. They are not using it for
Hmm.
trading. It is, for many of them, for most of them, It is a subsistence level farming that they are engaging in. So obviously we have to protect our agricultural sector. And that is why we have these tariffs, 14% you mentioned. I would have thought that, our tariffs on agricultural products would be much higher. But we have been bringing them down progressively. Of course, there are areas where we need to protect our industry, and that is exactly what we are doing. And you would have seen that as far as industrial products are concerned, you mentioned 8.3% for manufactured goods and 7% for China. They are comparable, and we have also voluntarily on our own, we have been bringing down whatever our committed rates under the WTO. They are much higher, but the actual tariffs that are on the ground, they are much lower. So I think from all accounts, and I would agree with Mr. Amrish Ranjan when he said that it's a political statement, because obviously, when he makes a comment like that, India is a big trade abuser, he is also mindful of the votes of the Indian diaspora. So he wants to reach out to them. And as far as, he would be thinking that the Indian diaspora, of course, it is very supportive of Prime Minister Modi, very fond of Prime Minister Modi. So let me, say good words about him.
Yeah.
Of course, both the leaders have an excellent rapport. We saw that when we had the Howdy Modi in Houston in
Yeah.
September 2019.
But even during
Namaste.
Trump's presidency, Ambassador Sajjanhar, last time around, there were certain concerns within both the countries about these tariff and tariff hikes. But my last question to you, Amrish Ranjan, is this sort of a statement, should this statement have been directed more towards China by the United States, considering that there is already a trade war that is going on? China has been blocking countries out if you don't manufacture locally. They block market access as well. Isn't China a bigger threat to the US than India is?
And Trump knows that. And he won't say it right now, because in fact that could backfire him politically, because he's also been in office and he couldn't do much about it. Unfortunately, COVID struck, and he couldn't do much about it. But you're right when you say that it is actually China which is a bigger threat to US than India, and that is why I say it is a political statement. Like Mr. Sajjanhar said, it is actually to please one section of his voters within the US fraternity, within the US community. And that is why I call it a political
Yeah.
statement. I don't see much merit in it. He'll meet Modi, hug Modi, and then people will like any any set of voters in any part of the world. Then they would forget it. If he assumes office, if he wins the election, then then the talks are completely different, because India is collaborating with US in several fields. Be it semiconductor industry.
Yeah.
There's a big giant called Micron Technology, which is
Yes.
investing big in India. So it is a political statement, is what I feel. Election time, after the elections
Yeah.
are over, I think.
And of course, we'll have to see, it all boils down to how the talks go beyond the hug diplomacy that we see between Donald Trump and Mr. Narendra Modi. But we'll have to leave it there. Let's see what goes off that meeting, what transpires in that meeting, if it does happen between Trump and Prime Minister Modi when he's visiting the United States. Thank you very much, Amrish Ranjan, Ambassador Sajjanhar, for joining us on Mirror Now and sharing your perspective.